New to BBC World News and unlike anything else you've seen before. A satirical look into the future now with Max Keiser in The Oracle.
Hi, I'm Max Keiser. Welcome to the Oracle News before it happens. That's right. Every week, the Oracle looks at the headlines and predicts what the headlines are going to be in the future. But before we do that, we need to know how we got here. Joining me today to discuss this is one of France's biggest brains, Jacques Attali. He has advised presidents, written numerous books, and is now trying to help save the world through microfinance as president of Planet Finance. Also joining me is comedian Carrie Quinlan. Now, the first thing we want to know, is this going to be a recession or another Great Depression? But before we can predict what will happen, we need to check in with the Oracle's research guru-esque, Stacy. Stacy, how did we get here?
Well, Max, I'll show you where we are. As you see, Dow Jones Index down, along with all equities around the world, the biggest drop since the Great Depression. Commodities down, house prices down. Consumer confidence plunged the most since 1967.
Nasty.
Here's something that's going up, the
Oh.
Volatility Index, otherwise known as the Fear Index.
The fear index. Oh, that's skyrocketing.
Fear is up.
There's fear in the streets.
And one more thing going up, and this is very bad news, is the Cheech and Chong Index.
The Cheech and Chong index.
Yes, they're big during recessions.
Is that right?
As you see over on the left side of the column.
Wasn't it Nancy Reagan who said, just say no to Cheech and Chong? I guess that wasn't good for their career.
Well, they're back.
They're back.
They're back.
Let's throw it open to our guests, Jacques and Carrie. Market meltdown, recession or depression. Jacques, let me start with you. Is this crisis, is it really catastrophically horrible, as is suggested in some of the writings I've read of yours recently?
It depends. We can act and we will act, but if we don't do anything, it will be certainly the worst depression since 29, as it is already, and but it's not going to be as terrible as it was in 29. Don't forget that in 29 the GDP of the US declined by half, and that, of course, that led to the World War. I'm sure that we can avoid that, but it's certainly something that is threatening, which is a huge depression, huge unemployment, huge, after that, inflation, because what people are doing today to save the world is only to pile up debt to fight against debt, which is quite a silly remedy.
I wasn't too worried about the financial thing until I saw the Cheech and Chong Index. And if they're back on the road, we're in big trouble.
More competition for you, I would imagine.
I wouldn't go that far, but it's certainly depressing.
Now, what is Angela Merkel saying?
Well, Angela Merkel, the German chancellor, said that excessively cheap money in the United States was the driver of today's crisis. Is that correct?
The driver was the too low wages for the American middle class. Yeah. And these low wages of the American middle class was not bearable without the capacity of the American middle class to borrow, and they couldn't borrow if the interest rate was too high. Then the low interest rate was a way to make borrowing affordable.
Franklin Roosevelt said that about the first Great Depression, that it was caused by low wages. The wages had gone too low.
It's exactly the reason why these two crises are parallel.
The thing that worries me is not the fact that I don't understand what's going on in finance, though, is that no one else seems to either, particularly the people who work in it. And that troubles me. I didn't understand finance at school and economics at school and things like that, so I stayed a long way away from that business. It does appear that people who equally didn't understand went in and started hedge funds.
They didn't care about understanding, they cared about making money.
Well, quite. So even, I've got a 5-year-old nephew, though, who I think can work out that if you lend money to people who can't possibly pay it back, they probably won't pay it back.
He should call Goldman Sachs. There's probably a job waiting for him.
Absolutely, perfect.
Now, historically, you mentioned the Tulip Bowl mania of 1637, I believe.
Yes.
And you actually mentioned that as a bit of a ray of hope, because this set the stage for a big growth period.
1637 was the beginning of 1.5 centuries of Amsterdam as New York, followed, by the way, by London at the end of the 18th century. And I think this crisis is also the beginning of something. We are on the eve of a huge growth period for mankind, high progress in new technologies, a lot of growth in demography, a lot of savings, and then people can organize a huge growth over the next 30 years.
Now, you mentioned technology.
Yes.
And some attribute the crisis to financial technology, or as Warren Buffett called them, weapons of mass financial destruction.
Yes.
And as would have it, I was before the UN Security Council recently speaking about this crisis. I think we've got the tape of that. Thank you, Mr. Secretary General. This is an important day as we review the situation with respect to disarming bankers. After the first Great Depression, Congress passed the Glass-Steagall Act. The purpose of that resolution was to disarm bankers and brokers. Never again would they be allowed to destroy the global financial system. I am here to warn you that they have, in fact, rearmed themselves with a deadly toxic debt instrument known as a derivative. I ask for this session today to support the core assessment made by famed investor Warren Buffett. He said, quote, "Derivatives are financial weapons of mass destruction that have apparently been devised by madmen. These instruments pose a mega catastrophic risk. Ladies and gentlemen, don't wait for the mushroom cloud of bad debts to explode over our financial system. Let's disarm the bankers before it's too late." Well, there you have it. There seems to be some agreement that these are meta catastrophic weapons of mass destruction.
Well, I wouldn't say that the CDOs are by themselves, or the derivatives, a danger. The danger is always to go beyond a certain limit. The financial system as well as CDOs are useful in order to transfer the savings from what it is, where it is coming to a place where it is best used, and CDOs are useful. But when there is no rule of law, and it is the case in a lot of countries, including UK, because the city is part of a lack of rule of law, then there can be a catastrophe, and this is the catastrophe we are in. But the catastrophe is to go beyond the limit, not the existing of CDO.
One of our friends that we talked to this week, very nice guy in Chicago. Let's play that little chat, and we'll give you a little idea. Okay, Richard Bluestein, you're in Chicago. You've got no income. You've got no savings to speak of, really. You've got no job. You've got a negative equity in your apartment. But what is coming in the mail?
Credit card offers, lots of them. I've just gotten 2 in the past couple days. I've got credit cards too, new credit cards being offered to me. I generally just stuff them in the drawer because I'm saving them for when I'm completely broke and homeless. But they keep offering me money, and I don't understand why, because I have no income whatsoever, and I don't have any potential sources of income, and I don't get it, really.
This is what goes on in America. Here's a gentleman with no job, no income. He's being flooded with credit cards and being told he has to spend on his credit cards or rack up more debt. That's his patriotic duty. So that's clearly an indication of some kind of financial madness.
Yes, it is, but it worked for a while. And why did it work for a while? It worked for a while because the world considered that it's good to let the Americans consume while the others are working and saving. As long as the other part of the world consider that the Americans consume on our behalf and we save for them, a lot of people are happy with that, because when the Americans buy, the other have jobs, and the Americans don't pay back, we don't care, because the money will come back with growth. But when at a certain moment the Americans are really visible not being able to pay back, that's the bankruptcy. And what will be the most important threat of next year will be the bankruptcy of US as Argentina.
Yes, a lot of people make the comparison to Argentina. You said something before the show which is very interesting, in that money is power. Mm-hmm. And in the case of this current financial crisis, it's demonstrating that access to money or credit is almost unlimited.
Yes. Power
has the tendency to corrupt and tends to bring out evil. Therefore, unlimited credit means unlimited evil. Is that a fair?
It's exactly that. Whenever there is no limit, there is evil on the end of the road. At the end of the road, and it's why I insist so much on the need for rule of law.
You keep bringing this up, rule of law, as if it's important for some reason. What's this all about, this rule of law? I haven't heard about this.
Yes,
is it really important?
You're right to say that for some people, even in your country, it's not very important, because you mentioned...
We just write new laws in America. Whenever we need new laws, we write new laws.
Yes, and when you want to implement the law in the US, you use the other country not to implement them. You mentioned the Glass-Steagall Act.
Yes.
That was very interesting, the Glass-Steagall Act, because it forbid a lot of things in the US. But what happened? What was forbidden in the US was done in the city, in London. And the city could have been considered in the last 50 years as being the place where the American banks were doing what was forbidden to do in the US.
Carrie, let me ask